Hello, I'm Katie Steele, Southwest Climate Hub Coordinator and Director of the ARI Project at New Mexico State University.
And I'm Tanya Burnett, the Education and Outreach Specialist at the National Drought Mitigation Center at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln.
And I'm Julie Elliott, here to walk you through the current GrassCast maps for the Southern Great Plains. I recently retired from the Natural Resources Conservation Service as a rangeland management specialist.
There's a whole bunch of collaborators that make GrassCast possible, and the slide you can see is a quick tour of their logos.
We're going to discuss the GrassCast forecast for the Southern Plains today. Just a reminder that GrassCast is a tool that gives you forage forecasts for the growing season. And when you go to the tool, you'll see 3 maps. Each map considers a different weather pattern for the growing season. Julie will be explaining how to interpret the maps, and Katie will discuss how you can use the zoomable feature to help you decide which map best represents your conditions. But first, Katie will give a quick overview of the 1-month weather forecast for the Southern Great Plains.
Thanks, Tanya. Remember that to interpret the GrassCast forecasts for any given date, you'll need to have a handle on how much more precipitation will fall for the remainder of the growing season, as well as what temperatures are going to do, because combined, it's what drives evapotranspiration and the amount of water that's ultimately available for growing grasses. So we're going to take a look at the National Weather Service outlooks, but you can consult any outlooks that you trust. Now, usually at this point, we look at the 3-month outlook, but today, we're just going to look at the 1-month outlook because there's really not that much time left in the growing season. So to find this website, National Weather Service Climate Prediction Center, just type that into Google and to also add to that 1-month outlooks. So here's the precipitation map. Now, if we look at the Southern Great Plains area, to the southeast of Colorado and parts of Kansas and in the Oklahoma Panhandle here, we've got a small area that's got a 33 to 40% of leaning above probability of above average rainfall. Go a bit further north, maybe 40 to 50% of above average rainfall. But this isn't a high percentage, and I wouldn't count on it, especially as we're in the last month of the growing season. For the southern part of our region down here, our probabilities are leaning below. About 33 to 50% below average precipitation is in the outlook. So it's not looking very rosy down here. In between, we've got equal chances. Equal chances means we've got a 33% of above average precipitation, a 33% of normal precipitation, or a 33% of below average precipitation. So it's pretty much a roll of the dice in this region. On the whole, keep an eye on your precipitation, but at this point, interpreting this map as far as GrassCast is concerned at the end of the season isn't really going to change much of your forage production from here on out. When we look at the temperatures, we've got temperatures leaning above, of course, and that's what we've been seeing all summer long. And the leaning above probabilities are here between 33% at the north part of the region, down to about 60% at the southern part of our Southern Plains region. So on the whole, these high temperatures are likely to offset any more moisture we might see in the rest of this month, where that moisture may not reach your forage for any extra growth. So it's something important to keep in mind when interpreting the GrassCast forecasts. So let's go back to Julie now.
Thanks, Katie. For more detailed information about GrassCast, please see the June 16th video on this YouTube channel. Before we dive in, those of you in eastern New Mexico will still need to consider what type of growing season you have. Do you have a continuous growing season from spring until fall? Or do you have two distinct growing seasons, spring and summer, with virtually no overlap between the spring grasses and the summer grasses? If your growing season is continuous, you're at your video. If you have 2 distinct growing seasons, then you'll want to see the Southwest video on this YouTube channel.
Hey, Julie, I was wondering, how have the summer growing season conditions been so far for the Southern Plains?
Well, generally speaking, the region's been getting drier since July 11th. This is particularly evident when we look at the water year, October 1st to the current date. We can see more and more orange and less green, particularly the dark green, as we move from the left to the right. The orange colors have really advanced in New Mexico and the southern half of the GrassCast area in Texas and the southwest corner of eastern Colorado. The lighter orange indicates 5 to 25% less precipitation than the 1980 to 2022 average, while the darker orange represents 25 to 50% less precipitation. There has been some shape shifting of the orange hues in Kansas and Oklahoma, indicating those areas have picked up some rains. But the orange areas in Oklahoma, Colorado, and Kansas have retreated since the first part of June, especially in Oklahoma and south central Kansas, indicating those areas are picking up more moisture. The map on the left is October 1st through July 11th. The map October on the right, or the map on the right is October 1st through August 7th. Not surprisingly, then, if we just look at summer rainfall, we can see that the green areas have shrunk and that the orange and red areas have advanced. There was so much precipitation in the first half of the summer, it's going to take a lot of dry weeks to erase the numerical excess, ranging from 5 to 25% more precipitation in the yellow-green color to 100% or more precipitation of the long-term average indicated by this dark green color. The deficit in southeast New Mexico, however, is even more severe than in the water year maps.
Julie, I know we've discussed this for the last several videos, but would you be able to explain again for our audience why the two sets of maps are there and why they look so differently?
While it could seem like shaving ice, it really is an important distinction to make. So the top maps here represent the total precipitation received since April 1st as a percent of the 1980 to 2022 average. April 1st to July 11th, April 1st to July 24th, April 1st to August 7th. The bottom maps represent total precipitation received since October 1st as a percent of the 1980 to 2022 average. The dates are the same, July 1st, July 24th, August 7th. There's a lot less of the darker green colors in the bottom set of maps because that deficit between October 1st to April 1st was so large compared to the long-term average. The rains since April 1st, on the other hand, have been so much more than the 1980 to 2022 average that they've made up for that fall, winter, and early spring shortfalls. Since most of the grass growth happens after April 1st, folks might be wondering, why do we even look at water year numbers? Well, the reason is because what happens in the fall, winter, and early spring really sets the stage for the summer. Soils can get past wilting point dry, something we call oven dry. There's water that the soil particles hold on to that the plants can't pull out. It's not available to the plants. When precipitation does come, the first water is taken back by the soils and not shared with the plants. Only after the soil gets its share back does water start coming available to plants. So looking at water year precipitation numbers help us identify where soils might still be unwilling to share their water with the plants. That's why in the bottom water year maps, the green areas are smaller. For example, the panhandle of Texas, and the yellow to red areas are bigger in Kansas and southwest corner of eastern Colorado than they are when we just look at the growing season year.
Julie, it's been quite a wet year early on this year, and I know GrassCast picks up on that. So I'm guessing that we'll still see quite a lot of blue or forage production in GrassCast because of the large amount of moisture that the area had seen in the past year. But would this also be true because we're getting late in the growing season?
You're very right, Katie. With the very notable exception of southeast New Mexico, the very western edge of the Great Plains, and the northeast corner of New Mexico, the very southwestern and southeast part of Texas, parts of Kansas, a few more isolated spots here and there. Most of the southern plains looks pretty good. If you're sitting on one of those orange or red areas, there is nothing minor that's about what's happening out your window. This is particularly true in the left map, which is the forecast if the spigot were suddenly to be turned back on.
I'm wondering if we could look at each map individually.
Oh, of course. Like 2 weeks ago, I feel badly for Southeast New Mexico. I keep having to say, except for, but here it is, except for Eddy County and the neighboring areas in Andrews County in Texas, as well as parts of Mora and Colfax County in northern New Mexico. Most of the southern Great Plains have no worries. Remember now, this is a forecast. If the precipitation is above the 1980 to 2022 average for the rest of the growing season. For those of you that are in the yellow and orange areas, this is the best the GrassCast thinks it could be. I'm really hoping that you are well into implementing your drought plan, or maybe you never stopped implementing it since early this year. I do want to caution our audience in Kansas. It's getting pretty late in the growing season, and you suffered severe losses last year. If your rangeland was in good condition with an exceptionally deep and healthy root system, you might luck out with something near average production if rainfall continues in abundance. But that is a big might and terribly risky to count on.
So if we go into the near average precipitation forecast from GrassCast, I expect we're going to see those areas expecting losses to get bigger.
Yes, it does, Katie, although not a lot. This is because we're getting so late into the growing season that grasses have shifted from growing leaves to making seeds and getting ready for winter. Of course, less rain means less growth for what remains of the growing season, and losses of leaf material that's already present. If the month ends this summer with near average precipitation, almost all of Southeast New Mexico is forecasted to see at least a 30% loss in production compared to the long-term average. Much more of the Texas counties along the southern border of the GrassCast area creep into that 5 to 15% loss zone. We also see expansions of more or less minor losses along the western border of the Great Plains in northeast New Mexico. And that's a development that just showed up 4 weeks ago. There are a few areas along the Oklahoma border in Texas and the north central Kansas that also fall into that last category, as indicated by the orange color. GrassCast still expects a lot of country to see at least 5 to 15% more production than average, indicated by this light blue color, and significant areas of 30% or more production than average, indicated by this dark blue color.
I'm anticipating that Southeast New Mexico, Southern Texas, and even some of Kansas will see even more areas of forecasted losses if the rains shut off or stay off for the rest of the growing season.
The movement is actually pretty minor, Tanya. Let me shift between the near average precipitation forecast and below average precipitation forecast. So here's the below average precipitation forecast. We'll back up to near average precipitation forecast. You pick an area and watch it. There's just not a lot of change. Of course, less rain means less production, and the areas that have been in deficit precipitation so far will not improve with continued deficit precipitation. The change isn't drastic because of what I explained before. We're just so late in the growing season that there isn't a lot of chance for total production to change at this point. The areas forecasted to have above average production get smaller, and those with below average production grow. Notably, even if the spigot shuts off, GrassCast expects most of the panhandle of Texas, the northeast border counties in New Mexico, almost all of Oklahoma, Colorado, and far western Kansas to still see significantly above average production. As I've noted in the last few videos, this above average total production may be due to the excessive growth of spring grasses. These grasses are about as tasty as straw to livestock with hot and dry weather. Cheatgrass could also make up a significant portion of this above average production. With heat and lack of moisture, plants are going to move into conservation mode. Those soils that have stopped sharing water with the plants will force them to go dormant. The leaves will become more brittle and less nutritious to grazing animals. Thus, the grass on offer for grazing will start falling back. GrassCast just is not set up to reflect these kinds of conditions. I would recommend that our viewers check out the Vegetated Drought Response Index, also called VegDry, particularly if they're absentee landowners.
Thank you for the updates, Julie. Just a quick reminder, GrassCast is forecasting total production, not grazable production. When a loss is expected, the grazable production loss will be significantly more than the total production loss. When an excess is expected, one needs to consider if that excess will be made up of grass species that are tasty to animals and when they'll be tasty for them.
You can go to grasscast.unl.edu or just type GrassCast into your favorite search engine to find the website. On this website, you can access a zoomable feature that will let you see more specific information about your area, including how much loss or gain you might expect, how much precipitation GrassCast believes you have received so far this growing season, and how much more is expected for the remainder of the growing season for each of the 3 scenarios. And this can help you decide which scenario is most applicable to your location and how you might need to adjust expectations that GrassCast is presenting. There's also several videos and tutorials that can help you interpret the maps.
Just so everybody knows, this is our last GrassCast forecast video for the season, though there will be one more set of maps issued in the last half of the week of August 21st, and then a final season map issued after August 31st.
Let us know if these maps have been helpful to you, and if so, how they were helpful. If there's something else that we can do better, please let us know that too, as we want these maps to be useful to you. You can reach us through the Contact tab on the GrassCast website. Thanks again, everybody, for watching. Thanks, Julie and Tonya.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.